All right. Hey everybody, what's going on? I got a very special guest for you all today. He goes by the name of Luciano Meirelles. You may have heard of his cigars before. They're brand new to the Canadian market, only been around about 3 months or so. But we got a lot to discuss today. We got about 4 or 5 different lineups. A cigar maker who has one of the most recognizable names right now, the hottest trending cigars in the market. Luciano, thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to visit your store and be here at the podcast. I'm enjoying Canada.
Yeah.
Beautiful country, and excited to talk about our company and talk about the cigars that we have lined up for Canada. So, thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
No, it's a pleasure. It's an honor to have you on. Because we got so much to talk about. I want to go over these 4 or 5 different lineups that I have. A lot of our friends and customers may be familiar with some of the hottest brands that you've been making for the Canadian market. We have Maria Lucia, which I understand is one of the more historical, dear to your heart blends because it has a history with your mother's name and the art designed by your daughter at the age of 13, I believe. I could be mistaken, but if you want to talk about what was the inspiration behind that and what do you believe it is about the blend that makes it so successful?
So, listen, I think I get asked a lot the question of why do you think your company, or what for your company stand out? Like where do you see that your company is different than other companies? Right, it's a tough
Right,
question.
right.
It's hard for you to kind of talk about without somehow bragging or saying, my company, it's better because of this or that. I think what makes us different is the fact that we don't have one single blend or one single brand out there that tastes like each other.
That's right.
Each one of the blends have their own identity. Some companies, and it's not a criticism because that's their whatever their characteristic. I think we create different taste profiles. We are able to, we only put in the market if there's truly something that's new. There's no connection between the blends. So
Absolutely.
everything that you see here, they taste different. They talk
Yeah,
to different parts of your brain. So
yeah.
there's an interesting aspect of identity to each one of the cigars. The Maria Lucia, it's definitely a cigar that's close to my heart, and I think blend wise, it's a very unique taste profile.
Yep.
I like to say that it's paradoxically um, very easy to make a Connecticut broadleaf cigar
Right.
and very hard.
Okay.
So it's very easy because you can put whatever tobaccos inside and wrap in Connecticut broadleaf, and most likely will taste like the broadleafs that you taste in the market.
Yes.
There's a lot of uh, broadleafs now in the market, and they taste very much alike. It's a pleasant flavor, you know.
Yeah.
So how can we make? The question was how could we make a Connecticut broadleaf cigar that would stand out, that would bring more flavor to the cigar, not
Right.
just the broadleaf. And I think what we built here was a very interesting blend where we have acidic tobaccos inside. So the Peruvian tobacco, the Dominican tobacco, they made that broadleaf very special. Now, why is special to my heart? It's a crazy story. I'll tell the short version.
Sure.
So yes, you're right. My daughter was just 14 years old when she did this artwork of
Yes.
the band.
And I'm just gonna hold it up for visual reference for everybody to recognize which blend we're referring to in particular. So when they see it at the store, it's this box pressed Robusto. They also come in a double Robusto, an exclusive cigar. We'll get into that in just a bit. But that's what Mr. Luciano here is talking about. Sorry, keep
Yeah.
going.
No, so she had this dream, and of a woman that she never met before. She wakes up, she comes to me and my wife and says, "Hey, I had this dream of a woman who could not help, and it was very disturbing. I just wanna, I did this drawing here, like I know it's artistic, but it's actually, um, she looks just like her." And we look at the drawing, it's beautiful, right? So we just kept it, it was nothing like special about it at that time. 4 years later, um, we receive a box with pictures, family pictures on of my mom's side. And my mom passed away when I was only 12 years old. So my daughter's never seen any picture or met my mom before. So as we opened the box, the first thing that's in that box was a photo that was upside down.
Okay.
And it says Maria Lucia's 18th birthday.
Right.
It was in the back of that photo. When we turned the photo, there was a picture of my mom. And my daughter looked at it. She said, "That's the woman of my dream."
No way.
So it was like one of those. I still get goosebumps when I remember. Like
Yeah,
it's one of those
that's
situations
crazy to
where
think
there's
about.
no explanation. You know,
Yeah,
um, I don't know, whatever kind of faith you have. It could be a coincidence, could be you know. And then after that, um, we we couldn't find the drawing, so it took us a long time to kind of find the drawing to
sure.
compare.
Yeah,
But once we put side by side, it was nuts. Like it's
yeah,
exactly the same. And for some reason, she got that kind of image in her brain and did the
yeah,
drawing. And only 4 years later, so 8 years from the drawing,
yeah.
2022, it's when we launched the
When
cigar.
you launched it.
Yeah.
And to me, I understand to your point, a Connecticut broadleaf blend cigar is kind of a paradox. It's easy to blend, but it's also hard at the same time, depending on what goes along with it and the combination of the other tobaccos. What stands out to me, however, the most when I smoke it, and what I always talk to my friends and customers about it is sometimes, do you know what I mean? When you smoke a cigar, you get to the final third, it gets very bitter and hot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a little too overpowering for your liking, and you just set it down a bit,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the beginner smokers. They're not really used to that nicotine tolerance, so they can't really handle it. This is one of the very few rare exceptions where when I even get down to the very final puff of this Maria Lucia blend, it's flavorful all the way
Mm-hmm.
through. And for that reason, I've had that almost just about every single time I've had this cigar. And I've probably smoked this blend over 10 times by now.
Mm-hmm.
And I would honestly say when I ever want to recommend to somebody who wants just full flavor,
Mm-hmm.
but the strength isn't that overpowering, where they can just very, very much rely on the consistency of the flavor to be thorough all the way to the final puff. This is something that I truly have in mind, and I always talk about it for that reason. It's just what stands out to me about the blend the
Mm-hmm.
most. And
Yeah.
and to that, we got to give credit to you and the blenders and everyone else involved in this process, because it's been making a lot of good reputation for the whole brand and our humidor in
Mm-hmm.
general. So we truly
I'm
appreciate that.
very glad to hear. I think I was talking to Richard about strength, in the car before we got here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, strength is something that is sometimes confused by harshness and spiciness.
Interesting.
So some people like they think that if a cigar is harsh and spicy, therefore is strong. Unfortunately, there is an expectation, especially in the American market, that strong cigars will be somehow spicy and harsh. But usually, spice and harshness they come from actually under fermented tobacco, not necessarily from strong tobaccos.
Ah,
In fact, uh, the more fermented the tobacco is, which it translates to maduro or mature. That's the translation of maduro.
yeah.
Um, the more kind of buttery and round and easy to smoke it is. It's
More flavor on the in the
Yeah,
tobacco.
so
Yeah.
the more flavor, more roundness. It's clean. It's pleasant to smoke, and that's a true Maduro. So you have tobaccos that are really old in this blend, and they don't deliver ammonia. They deliver nicotine.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
harsh cigars and spicy cigars, because they're under fermented, they deliver more ammonia. That's why people get sick, or sometimes they feel like you said, the cigar gets just too unpleasant at the very third of the cigar, right?
Yes, yes.
People get tired of. I think the
Yeah.
Maria Lucia, it's a very interesting combination of tobaccos that deliver sweetness, roundness, and it's a pleasant and easy cigar to smoke.
And just an overall well-balanced cigar. And I like the idea that you were talking about with the concept of Maduro fermentation and what
Mm-hmm.
brings that bold flavor profile from that tobacco with the process of fermentation. Because a lot of our customers have the misconception, well, just because the tobacco leaf is a lot darker, then it should be a lot stronger. But we know that's not the case, obviously, and we understand that a lot of the Maduro aspect of things is a byproduct of fermentation. It's breaking down the flavor of in the tobacco, like the oils, to make it more of a bolder, rounder cigar, which is kind of what we expect from the Maria Lucia, and that kind of justify or explain rather why it's such a well balanced cigar. I want to take a step back and talk about your humble beginnings and what it was with your inspiration that got you into cigars. Why cigars? Was there anybody that kind of helped you get into the industry, or just go over that kind of summarization, if you will?
Yeah, I think the quick and short version of my story is that I have always struggled with a medical condition that I have called synesthesia. So I have a physical problem where my senses are mixed up. So I have my audition is mixed up with my vision and with how I perceive flavors.
I see.
It's always been a struggle, and I've been smoking cigars since I was 18 years old, and something that I was always passionate about, and almost like part of a kind of healing process for me, like a sort of a medicine for to cope with some of that stuff. Um, so synesthesia comes with 95% of bad things,
Wow.
like nausea and headaches and confusion and tiredness. There's several bad things, but there's some interesting things. I think everything in human life comes in a package.
Absolutely.
You see like the best scientists and physicians, and they somehow, if philosophers, not physicians, somehow they have a level of depression or some sort of other things that comes in a
Absolutely.
package. I think the ability to memorize flavors is something that was very easy for me, and to recognize.
Very interesting.
Like I can remember cigars that I smoked when I was 18 years old. My first cigar, my second cigar. So it's
Wow.
one of the things why I believe our cigars are different is because um, I always felt like making a cigar that already exists for me. I always felt like cheating. You know what I'm
It felt
saying?
like cheating, yeah,
Yeah,
because it's already something available on the market, and
exactly. So if I
yeah,
can smoke a cigar and dissect the flavors, I can just replicate. It's easy
absolutely,
because of
absolutely,
that characteristic. But
yeah,
just kind of jumping forward, this is of course the struggle of my life for many years. My business before was basically private equity, and I also had a consultancy company that was used to work for kind of blue chip companies that wanted to expand overseas.
so
Or
you're in finance,
I was in
essentially.
finance,
Okay,
and but also in the political consultancy business. So I help
interesting.
companies to expand overseas, would negotiate with the government, like land donation, tax incentives, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my clients at the time was the Dominican Republic government. So I was working with the DR government. That's when I met most of the manufacturers in Dominican Republic.
In the Dominican, yeah.
And one of the manufacturers I connected the most was Ernesto Carrillo. He was definitely one of the mentors that I can mention.
Mm-hmm.
I met Ernesto in one of the worst times of my life. So, and that's the very reason why I got into the cigars.
Yeah.
I was basically making a lot of money, but losing my family. And then I made a decision to change my lifestyle and got 100% into cigars. And the first advice that I received from Ernie was like, don't start where everybody starts. Everybody starts on making a brand, and then eventually they'll manufacture their own cigars, and then they'll get into the agricultural side.
Yeah.
And I said, don't worry, because I have no aspiration to kind of really have a brand. I just want to do this because I love tobacco, I love cigars. If I can make cigars for other people in the future, that's great. So I started actually growing tobacco.
Yeah.
And that was the main thing for me. I think to this day, growing tobacco is probably our main business. Then eventually, 5 years later, we created the factory, and the factory started making cigars for other brands.
Yeah.
And only in 2017 we launched our own brands. So we'll be making cigars for and selling tobacco to major brands that are in the market. But I only felt confident to kind of really launch our own brands in 2017. So it's been a little over 16 years of journey.
So 16 years from until your launch date for your first cigar. So you started 2001 blending. Am I doing that math correctly or
No, you're not.
okay?
2007.
2007, right? Okay. So you were blending for 10 years before launching, essentially.
Yeah, so blending was always part of. I always did, like, even for myself. You
Yeah.
know, it's like I said, it's part of my therapy. I basically, I always walk with tobacco.
Yeah.
You know, I blend almost on a daily basis. Sometimes you stumble into something that will become a product. Um, but no, I mean, blending four products was something that I was probably started about 11 years ago. Like
Interesting.
5 years after we started we
Right.
got into the growing business.
And then what was the first cigar that you launched with under your brand name Luciano?
It was a cigar called Luciano the Traveler.
Okay.
So the Traveler was a cigar that we used just Pelo de Oro as a seed strain,
Sure.
but from different regions.
Pilar de Oro, what is that tobacco strain? Where does it come from?
Pelo de Oro was a seed that was developed in an area of Cuba called Santo Espírito.
Interesting.
So Pelo de Oro was very acidic tobacco.
Okay.
Yeah. So they the only problem is that Pelo de Oro got almost like banned from Cuba because Pelo de Oro had a lot of issues with blue mold.
Blue mold, common
Yeah,
problem.
was a seed that was very susceptible to the blue mold at that time.
Yeah.
You have to remember that I'm talking about over a century ago.
Yeah.
They had no agricultural technology, so it was all kind of natural products and things that they would use to control the plagues that were not efficient, not effective.
Absolutely.
They realized that actually that seed, when it's planted in higher altitudes,
Yeah.
It becomes more resistant to the blue mold, and in climates that are drier. So a lot of farmers in Peru start growing that Pelo de Oro, and it really worked. It's an amazing tobacco. And also in Dominican, you see some Dominican farmers growing Pelo de Oro as well. So we made a blend mixing Pelo de Oro with a also Pelo de Oro background on the binder. The wrapper was a Sumatra. It was the only difference.
The only
in the
thing,
seed
yeah,
strain was the wrapper that was a
interesting.
Sumatra.
Interesting.
It was very successful. We sold really quick. But it was a limited edition because Pelo de Oro is not an easy tobacco.
It takes a lot of cultivation for it to come out properly.
Yeah, and they grow really small. They're really small, and it's not an easy tobacco to kind of work with.
So, what do we have from the lineup that we have available in this Canadian market right now? Fiat Lux, if I pronounce that correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that translate to?
It translates into "Let there be light."
Okay.
So it's a Latin expression.
Yeah.
But it was very commonly used during the social movement of enlightenment.
Right.
So people refer to light as knowledge.
Yeah.
When most of humanity had no access to books and knowledge because of the old world, right? Because of the church, you know, at that time, the Catholic Church. There was a movement called the Enlightenment, right? So in the Enlightenment, the expression that was very used by philosophers to refer to knowledge is light. So we're in the dark times, and now we see light.
Now we see light.
The idea of the Fiat Lux, it is truly, and every single cigar that we have, it translates a story, or there's a story that culminate into that specific cigar.
Right on.
In this case, it's one of the most, that's one of the blends that we took the longest to come out with. I remember, I think we went through over 17 prototypes before we got to the final one.
Yeah.
So, and the whole idea was to cause more salivation, to make you salivate more. There's certain tobaccos that dry your mouth, certain tobaccos that deliver more saliva. And the more you salivate, the more you perceive flavors, especially in the front palate. Yeah. Even to eat, for you to perceive the flavor of the food, right, you need to salivate. So the taste buds, they need to open. And when you salivate in abundance, so your saliva becomes more alkaline as you salivate, as you smoke the cigar. So there's a lot of transitions in the cigar. Yeah. And the transitions don't come from actually placing different tobaccos. The transition comes from your saliva changing the pH. So then you get different experiences with the cigar. And Fiat Lux became a well-consolidated, one of the top-selling brands in the United States.
And for those interested in like the profile behind the blend, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a Sumatra wrapper as well, correct?
That's correct.
Ecuadorian Sumatra.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you characterize this for anybody who's like a medium full-bodied smoker? Would that be something up their alley that they're interested in, or
You know, I'll tell you a story.
yeah,
You know, do you know what I know? There's a disruptive taste profile. Do you know what disruptive taste profile is? When you create a new benchmark of taste profile of like you've been smoking Nicaraguan tobaccos, Dominican tobaccos, mixed of both, but you never actually experience that specific taste profile. You
I
understand?
yeah
So,
yeah I'm
okay.
I'm following with you.
So,
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
you know? Uh, I remember when we came up with Fiat Lux,
Yeah,
we'll sit around the room and I'll pass the cigars to some friends and some people that I trust, to smoke it and try it. And then I ask people to write I always do that, to write notes. I wouldn't tell them what it is,
yeah,
and not even if it's the same cigar. So I asked them to write notes of what they think of the cigar in terms of strength, taste profile, what's the experience they have.
sure.
And when I notice that everybody's everywhere, like someone will say, "Oh, that cigar is actually super strong,"
Yeah,
and then someone in the other room would write in the other side of the table would write, "Well, that cigar is mild for me." And then you see people everywhere. Someone says it's mild, someone says it's full, someone says it's medium full.
yes, yes,
That's when I think you create a disruptive taste profile because people will experience that cigar differently. I
yes.
think my opinion is this is actually a medium, sometimes medium mild cigar, but full of flavor. It's a
Full
lot of
flavor,
flavor.
full
Probably
flavor.
one of the most, there's this overused expression, Cubanesque. Probably is one
Very
of the most
Cubanesque.
Cubanesque. I think it delivers more flavors actually in
Yeah,
terms of layers of flavor.
yeah,
But for me, it's a medium, maybe medium, solid medium cigar. Now, if you heterohale that cigar,
yeah.
so you're gonna get higher acidity. So maybe you perceive as medium full if you are used to heterohale. If people don't heterohale that cigar, people that don't heterohale cigars,
Yeah,
they will feel like this is a solid medium, maybe medium, even mild to
yeah.
some people. So
So it can most definitely vary from person to person depending on the smoker and how he perceives that flavor, obviously,
yeah, I'm
right?
sorry to make things complicated,
No,
but
no,
there's not a simple answer here.
it's always a learning curve, even
Yeah.
for people like who work in the industry, such as me and my friend Rich and everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
because tobacco is a complex thing by nature, and there's so many different variables that can adjust the impact and how you perceive it. And one of the most
Mm-hmm.
interesting things about you is the condition you were referring to earlier, where you somehow seem to memorize flavors from such a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to kind of relate that to this other line of cigars that you bring in called This is the Dreamer,
Mm-hmm.
correct? And if I recall, it uses the Ecuador Habano wrapper, right?
It does, yeah.
It was such a very popular wrapper. But for whatever reason, maybe it's the dimensions of the cigar and the ratio of wrapper to filler where the flavor does seem to change for me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
find it's not your traditional Ecuador Habano flavor. Would that be somehow attributed to you to your ability to kind of compare notes from a lot of the cigars you smoked during your youth up until now, and you play around with such exotic tobaccos like Peruvian fillers, so not very
Mm-hmm.
common as a filler, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm not sure. You're the expert, but I don't really see it too often in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
People to use Peruvian tobaccos. I'm not saying that's what's going on here, but such as the other blends like Maria Lucia uses Peruvian tobaccos and stuff.
Okay.
But the point is, Luciano, as an Ecuador Habano rapper, what is it about it that makes it so unique? From my experience, I found it to be totally different than majority of other Ecuador Habano rappers.
I think I was telling Rich this too, and I think unfortunately there's something in the industry about people just repeating things and then it becomes truth, right?
Yeah.
You can only actually really taste this wrapper if you smoke on its own. Uh, uh,
Yes. Yes.
and a lot of people don't know this, but most of the taste profiles you feel on the outside of the cigar, or I call, the low primes or the thinner leaves that are around the bunch of the cigar, is actually by smoking individually each leaf.
Right.
Because what you might be feeling is actually the binder and not the wrapper, because they are together, they burn together.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't think you can actually
Separate the taste
set,
from
no,
rapper.
yeah, or even
Yeah.
like set a taste profile. Say, oh, this is the taste profile of a Havana wrapper.
This is very interesting.
It's impossible.
Very
So
interesting.
it's a combination of the leaves that are outside, the secos are outside, plus the binder, plus the wrapper. And you might taste actually different Havana wrappers. They are actually together with maybe a Sumatra binder. That's a completely different outcome.
Completely different outcome.
Or maybe together with a Mexican binder, which is a
Yeah,
way different outcome, and they all have the same wrapper. So
absolutely.
I like to demystify some things because
Yeah,
the more and more I see consumers wanting to know the truth behind
right.
cigars.
Exactly. Yeah.
People are tired of kind of the bullshit and people just kind of making things up just to kind of sound a little more romantic.
Well, a common recurring theme working at the retail level in the cigar business is a lot of our customers will come in and they want something different.
Yeah.
And a lot of these blends, not to sound ignorant, I haven't really smoked all of them too much because there's so many to try out there in the market, but some of them do taste the same when you talk about, let's say, Ecuadorian Connecticut mild cigar. It does lack by nature, and it's not going to be as overpowering as a flavor profile. But even like a lot of the majority of the other Ecuador Habano wrappers I've had personally, and as honest as I can be, I do find them all to be comparable, with the exception of the Dreamer. And I think one of the most non-negotiable things that I can really testify at the retail level, every blend from the Luciano lineup is unique in its own sense. And regardless of whether the tobaccos you've heard of are commonly used in other blends, this is something you have to try if you're looking for a different outcome that's tailored to you. And if you haven't really been on our website at smokemastercigars.com, we have a whole category for Luciano. You can find Fiat Lux, The Dreamer, Maria Lucia, ATL Magic, which right now we're going to get into. And as far as I can recall, this is a Mexican San Andreas wrapper,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
I have a question leading up to the actual secondary question for the blend, but I just wanted to know what differs from the characteristic side of things as from a Connecticut broadleaf to a San Andreas, because a lot of our friends want me to ask this, they find it to be comparable, where obviously they're different varietals, but what is it about them that makes it so similar in the blends that people pick up on?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think, but again, to perceive flavor is something so subjective. I maybe think that the connection between them could be a more depth in terms of minerality.
Sure.
They both have that characteristic.
In the soil, right?
They look somehow alike sometimes.
Yes.
But the San Andres has a completely different kind of soil composition when we talk about where they come from, right?
Right.
I find the San Andres, from the Valley of San Andres, a very sweet tobacco that the fermentation is faster. The seed strain of Mexico ferments quicker.
Right.
The seed strain of the broadleaf takes a long time to ferment. If you don't ferment properly, it doesn't burn well. That's another characteristic that differs from that. But the ATL has this San Andreas wrapper, and it reacts really, really well with the binder. And you have Esteli tobacco predominantly on that specific cigar. We can still mute the bite of Esteli by playing with the binders and wrappers.
Interesting.
It's also a round and sweet smoke
for sure
that delivers a lot of nicotine, but can be it can be perceived as a medium cigar, not necessarily a full body cigar.
Quite the subjective cigar.
But the texture, yes, is intense, is bold, but it's not overwhelming. It's not super. Well, what people think is strong, it's not strong at all.
It's not quite strong. Yeah. The strength, just to clarify the point you made earlier, the strength you would say is the ammonia in the tobacco that hasn't dissipated from the fermentation. Is that where the strength comes from?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? People relate strength to nicotine, right?
Yes.
And it should be.
Yes.
The truth is, the more under fermented the tobacco is, the more ammonia the tobacco has.
Yes.
The slowest your body will absorb nicotine.
Right.
So what is interesting is, I see a lot of people smoking those harsh and spicy cigars, and they get sick. They get stomach sick. They feel nausea, right?
Sure.
But actually, what causes nausea and their stomach to get upset is the ammonia.
Yes.
So the intoxication of nicotine. Well, nicotine in your body has basically three stages. One is first you feel focus. It's a stimulant. You feel focus. The second one is relaxation. When you have
Interesting.
more nicotine, you feel a little more relaxed. And the third one is you start having your blood vessels constrict, so you start having headaches. Those are the symptoms of nicotine. So there's no nausea or stomach issue. The stomach issue and the nausea comes from tobaccos that are under fermented. I strongly suggest that if you have that experience.
Okay, cool. Back and running. I wanna transition into one of the future cigars that I think will be available in the Canadian market.
Mm-hmm.
I can confirm that soon, but this one is called Foreign Affair. I'm gonna hold it up in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep talking about new blends that are unique to its core. This Foreign Affair, if I recall, you mentioned it's a Sumatra wrapper, right? And
Yes.
you have a Sumatra wrapper cigar already in your lineup, but what is it about Foreign Affair that kind of stands out for itself?
I think again, when you grow tobacco like we do, that gives you a little bit of a leverage power to kind of bring tobaccos from other regions, you
Yeah,
know. And here in Foreign Affair is a true odd for globalization of the tobacco industry,
sure.
because we're using tobaccos from basically four different regions into that specific cigar. So you have the Equatorian, Sumatra, you have Dominican tobaccos, you have Nicaraguan tobaccos, and you have uh,
Honduran.
the not the Honduran. So you have the Dominican, we have the I gotta blink. I hope you added this. So you have the Dominican, you have the Nicaraguan, you have the Equatorian,
Yeah.
and then you have the Brazilian tobacco.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
So all the combinations also double binded. So the combinations of those tobaccos create a very interesting experience. You know, there's a factor of medium strength, but
Yeah.
delivering a tremendous amount of flavor. You know.
Yeah. And then how true would you be able to kind of just testify to this conception in the industry where the wrapper to filler ratio plays a role in the flavor, of course, right? And I see this is a
Mhm.
kind of a smaller ring gauge than a traditional bigger cigar.
We have
Would you,
four sizes on this.
okay, this one in particular, what is
Uh-huh.
about a 48 ring gauge from me eyeballing it? Would that be accurate?
Yeah, this is actually a 5 by 15.
50.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's would you be able to say like it has more flavor because it has less filler than a
Mm.
60? Would a 60 give you less flavor because it has more filler, or how does that ratio
It's
play?
not actually the filler, is actually the airflow that you get,
Oh,
is the gauge, the pressure of air, the amount of smoke you get. Of course, if you smoke a Lancero, that will deliver a small volume of smoke. So your mouth will perceive, your brain will perceive the flavor different.
yeah,
So when you have the same proportions into a 50 gauge like this, your brain will perceive, because it's this more volume of smoke. If you
right,
smoke, uh, we don't make, fortunately, a 6 by 60 on this, but if you smoke a 60 gauge of any cigar, your lungs have only a certain capacity to actually pull smoke,
yeah,
right? So if you have a large gauge, it becomes really hard to pull that smoke. That's why you have that sensation that the flavor has been diluted in your mouth. It's because you're trying to pull smoke, but the ring gauge is so big that you don't actually bring that much of flavor,
that's
and it
super
feels like
interesting.
everything is it's milder in the
It
ring
feels like
gauge.
yeah,
Yeah,
or the flavor is just more concentrated because there's like more of a concentrated airflow in the volume, right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
it's all like your brain perception and what
It
you pick
is.
up on in yourself. So when you as a blender, can you describe the step-by-step process? Like when you want to come out with a different, do you take a prototype when you want to make a new different cigar and you play around off that? Or do you go for some entirely new different exotic tobaccos that you
Mm-hmm.
can find and see how you can kind of compare that based off the memory you have and the flavors that you've tried
Yeah.
before and you build off that? How does that work for you?
Not necessarily bring exotic tobaccos at all,
Yeah,
but I'm not even talking about the fact that I have synesthesia. Anyone who start training and cooking, we all have memories of flavor. We all have.
absolutely.
If you
And
try
the
to,
perception, you remember
yeah,
the smell, the taste, the things like
if
that. Yeah,
you probably if you went to a restaurant, or if you try your mom's lasagna or whatever, you can actually, when you imagine that food, you can almost like taste in your mouth. I
yeah,
think everybody has a little bit of that capacity to remember the flavors. when you start blending for so many years, it comes to a point where you know actually what some combinations will result.
Yeah.
I think it's more time that we spend in our brains than actually physically doing things to see what's going to be the result.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think at the beginning, maybe, you know, if you're learning how to blend, you're gonna first you have to learn each one of the tobaccos um, and see, you know, where they're coming from and what kind of soil there is there. But I like to say that in blended, there's three things that are extremely important.
Yeah.
The first one is a contrast. You always need contrasts. You always need to have, I was giving an example to Richard. It's just an analogy. If you were born in a box with a lot of light,
Yeah.
and you never experienced darkness before, that light, the strong light, you cannot even find where the source of light is coming from. Everything is bright, right?
Interesting.
If you need some sort of darkness to kind of find where the source of light comes from, so you need a
You
background.
need, yeah. So that's what you mean. We need the contrast. You need the
Yes.
opposite of the spectrum to help
So
play
I don't
off
know
each
if you
other.
like dark chocolate, but
Yeah.
people who eat dark chocolate, they know that if you add just a little bit of salt, you bring more sweetness out of the chocolate,
Wow.
right?
I
So
I agree.
because usually the dark chocolate, they don't add a lot of sugar, you know, that's only 30% of milk and there's a little bit of sugar only. It's usually
Absolutely.
a healthier tobacco. It's
Yeah.
90%, it's almost no sugar.
Yeah.
So how do you actually perceive some kind of sweetness in that chocolate?
Yeah.
It's because someone added a little bit of salt. So
Yeah.
the whole salivation process explained to you, and how you perceive actually in your brain sweetness in the tobacco. You got to remember, this smoke doesn't carry a lot of sugars.
Yeah.
So why your brain perceives sweetness? There's certain minerals
There's
that
a
actually we our brains perceive as sweet,
yeah.
and one of them is magnesium.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
if you have some sort of salinity
Yeah.
into one of the tobaccos, so that tobacco that has more magnesium will actually play a trick in your brain, and you feel like it is sweeter. You know,
Absolutely. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
so again, that's the number one thing. You know, it's always creating contrast. The second one is make sure that when you create a blend, people are salivating, because it's the only way that you perceive flavor. It's if you salivate. There's
Through
no other
this,
way.
you have to salivate
In your
for it.
front palate,
Yes.
you
Yes.
will feel flavor. I don't know if you smoke cigars that the front palate doesn't have any residual flavor whatsoever.
Oh,
You
of course. Yeah, that happens.
And then when you retrohale, you feel some
Yes.
some flavors, because the taste buds that are in your upper palate and your nostril
Yeah.
doesn't require any salivation. So you can, that's why you smell things, you know, even if it's dry, your nose is dry, you smell things.
Yeah.
That's the same concept. So the cigar needs to make you salivate. Just like
Absolutely.
for you to eat, you need to salivate. For you
Absolutely.
to perceive even drinks, you need to salivate.
Yeah.
So the taste buds need to open, then you can perceive the flavor. So that's the number two. The number three, which is extremely important, is to make sure the construction is on point, where you have the proper combustion, so the cigar burns.
Yeah.
And I see, if you don't know how to create that construction, you might create a cigar that have a potential to taste good, but there's no combustion. So you didn't place the seco envolado, the thinner leaves, on the
Yes.
outside of the cigar. So sometimes you just kind of place them in a center, and then you use a binder that's too thick, so the combustion is compromised.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So those are the three main things.
Yeah. Okay, absolutely. So the contrast, the combustion, and the need to salivate.
Yes.
Just to summarize it, those are the things that kind of, in Luciano's perspective, makes the blend a lot more successful than what many would imagine it to be. Now, I want to actually tie this point into my next question, because I recently had an experience with a customer interaction, and he was a relatively new beginner smoker, and he had this fear of, he looked at a cigar, he doesn't know anything about it, and it's hard to trust somebody else's word when he understands that it could be different for him. If he wants to smoke it himself, it's going to be entirely different. What advice do you have to new beginner cigar smokers who are looking to get into the hobby at this stage and don't have that confidence to really put the time and effort and require to pick up on these acquired taste that you would need to enjoy a cigar, and how would you kind of guide them through that?
I think you already answered it. I was going to use that word. So it's an acquired taste.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a slow process where you shouldn't let too much of the outside opinions to influence your discovery. I
Sure.
think another word that I would like to use is discovery. I think smoking cigars, it's a discovery of flavors and tastes that maybe your brain is not accustomed to. And then, but once you experience that, there's magic, you know. And as much as we can talk about blends and things like, you know, how we perceive flavor, at the end of the day, I don't know if you ever had the experience of going to a very good restaurant, like a good restaurant with a good chef, and then you sit there and you experience a dish that you never experienced before, and then the result is you are just at awe. You was like,
Yeah.
man, this is amazing. You know, you don't go to the chef and says, "Oh, what's the proportion that you used of garlic and you
Absolutely.
just enjoy it." You know,
Yeah.
I think what it's missing out there is just for the new consumers to kind of enjoy and discover. And I think my advice to a new smoker is to enjoy, and the more they enjoy, the more they try, the more they will discover new flavors, and that's the process
Yeah.
of smoking. And of course, there's the pairing aspect too. I really advise people to try actually food with cigars, drinks with cigars,
Yeah.
and your brain start making the connections, you know, and then you have a great experience.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me into this final segment that I want to really talk about with you guys here, because Mr. Luciano himself is, you know, kind of encouraging everybody to try different flavors and whatnot. But for me, I think what better way to do that than to go over the entire sample, because we got all these different varietals that we have through the Fiat Lux, the Dreamer, ATL Magic, and Maria Lucia, which happens to be my favorite. And right now we have a special offer going on for anybody willing to try a brand new like cigar that's new to the market, and one of the hottest trends that I would personally consider to be a very interesting one. Maria Lucia, the double Robusto, is currently going to be included with anybody who purchases 4 Luciano cigars. So whatever 4 cigars you buy from Luciano, you can try the Maria Lucia and the brand new double Robusto that's going to be included for free. And you can do that with online, www.smokemastercigars.com. Free online shipping over $99, or stop by in store St. Catharines. But I think that's one of the better way to try a wide spectrum of flavors. You can go through all these different blends one by one and see what it has to offer for you. And Mr. Luciano, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're a busy, busy person. I just want to thank you again for, you know, taking the time and educating us all today on what the industry is about, the power behind tobacco blends, and most importantly, your beautiful blends you have for the Canadian market as well.
Thank you very much, my friend. It was a pleasure to be here. I love doing this. I love kind of having the opportunity to talk about not just the brands and the blends, but talking about our history and talk about tobacco.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.